Hello, welcome to our webinar where we will focus today on examples and tools and frameworks that are available to enable scaling of rooftop solar across the fashion supply chain. First of all, thank you very much for joining us. We understand it's end of the year and there are also these are times of turmoil. So thank you for taking the time to join us today from everywhere that you are. So ni hao, xin chao, salam, namaste, bonjour, guten morgen. Thanks a lot for being here. Also, thank you for participating and having representation from almost every sector and stakeholder of the supply chain, from the brands to the factories to consultants, of course, NGOs, EPC companies, and also industry associations. So it will be useful to hear from you during Q&A session and also via ongoing Q&A. What are your thoughts? What are your challenges? What we understood is majority of you are involved with apparel products, with garments and so on. And what we also understood is that we have a good representation of both the cut and sew process, but also the wet processing activities. Then the interesting part that all of you shared with us was the areas where you plan to invest over the next year or years. And we see, of course, the focus on energy efficiency, the switch to renewable energy, but of course, also the related aspects of water efficiency and chemical management. Today, the focus will be on how information, framework, tools, policies can be utilized, are being utilized to support your switch to renewable energy. Now, in order to look at what will be covered today, it's important to know what you feel are the challenges. So there's almost an equal distribution based on your feedback. There's this point about you want more knowledge about and information about the different solar technology solutions, that you would want to know more about the financing options, that you would want to see some business cases for switching to renewable energy and rooftop solar, and that you would want to know what should you be thinking about in terms of quality assurance of the PV solutions or the solar solutions that you purchase. So to set the scene, let's go back a few years. What we are talking of today is essentially not something new. Already from Club of Rome and from organizations like Desertec and others, there has been emphasis on the power of using the power of the sun and how it could help all of us, in terms of lowering emissions, in terms of lowering the cost for energy, but also in terms of increasing the access to energy. And there are many frameworks, policies, standards set up. Some of them provide guidance, others measure progress, and the others provide a rating based on the performance. Now, why this becomes relevant? Of course, when we talk of the fashion industry, we've known also from our own factories that there's a significant amount of chemicals use, significant amount of water use, and significant amount of energy use to heat the water so that the chemicals can fix to the fabric, but also to treat the harmful chemicals in the ETP. So there's been a significant impact also in terms of the overall greenhouse gas emissions. So based on analysis by Qantas, we see that the apparel and footwear sector's usage of energy and other resources accounts to about 8% of global emissions. There are other reports which mention 5%. Nevertheless, this is significant, for one industry. We also see that when we look at the different stages of production, whether it be fiber production, yarn, fabric, dyeing, and so on, there's impact on energy use and hence greenhouse gas emissions. There's impact on water use. There's impact on human beings. So there's also this nexus playing between chemical, water, and energy. Better chemicals are those which require less water, less energy to fix to garments, and hence less energy to treat them in the ETPs. From the recent report of Greenpeace from last month, the fashion fairy tale, there's also focus on greenhouse gas emissions. While the initial focus was purely on harmful chemicals and elimination of harmful chemicals, both from production and from the ETPs and wastewater, there's now also this visibility and this increased focus on what is the GHG emissions because of energy use within the supply chain, especially in scope 3 operations, as we say, which is in the manufacturing stage. Now, not only is it relevant from carbon emission perspective, but it's also a matter of cost. On an average, we see that the cost of energy for a factory, a textile factory, is something like 30% of their overall operational cost. So when energy efficiency measures are implemented, when the cost of energy is reduced, of course, this will have an effect, a positive effect on the operational cost and the bottom line of the factories. So all of this was taken into account by many of you, but also by many of the large fashion brands. And many of them already have set up their targets based on the Science-Based Target Initiative. So here's an overview. This extract is possible thanks to the information in the climate action training of GIZ, but also information is available publicly on the Science-Based Target Initiative. The interesting part here is the scope 3 emissions, which is what is contributed by the manufacturing process of raw materials and of the garments, essentially, where again, commitments range from absolute reduction to GHG intensity reduction per piece of garment, let's say. At the same time, there's the report about decarbonizing fashion from earlier this year, where again, one of the milestones is shifting to 100% renewable energy in manufacturing, that is tier 1 through 3. And some are recommending that there should be a 60% use of renewable by 2030. Others are recommending a 100%. All of that means that the brands would also be talking with their supply chains in order to meet this milestone. We also see from many of you who are involved with the Higg FEM verification, and we see while the performance for energy has been gradually improving, there's also this focus on reducing GHG emissions even more. And finally, one of the other industry associations, ZDHC, has a platform Supplier to Zero, where initially the focus was purely on chemicals use in production and detection in the wastewater. Soon, there will be a module where factories will report about resource efficiency based on the commitments to UNFCCC. Yeah? Well, from all the news we've heard in the recent past, there have been different terms and events and words which have popped up. One of them was COP26. And while you look at this, I would request Ryan, if you can raise the first poll question for the participants to get a feeling. Yeah, we of course spoke about or looked at many things with regards to sustainability, environment, and so on. And I guess in your countries and in your offices and with your business partners, you've also discussed a number of these things. So it will be interesting to know, what are the 3 most commonly used terms and words in the past 6 months for you, either when you're talking internally in your office or with your business partners, or what you're watching on news in your country? COVID, of course. What about building resilience? What about job losses, or carbon, or COP26, or green finance, or commitments to SDGs by government? So it will be useful to hear from you and get your feedback on what you have come across. And that also sets the stage for us. Yeah, Ryan, maybe we can pull up the results in a few seconds. So that's also relevant now. So what we see, of course, COVID has been a major point, but we also see the topic of carbon, of COP26, of building resilience and commitments to SDGs. These are an access to finance. These are some of the things that we will cover as we move along. Now, having looked at all the big commitments by the brands, by the governments, now comes a point on how it should be implemented in each of those countries where the supply chain is located. Yeah. For that, we'll have Ms. Kristen Zoma, who's with GIZ. She has over 10 years of experience working on the topic of sustainability, clean energy, initially focusing on food industry, but now also on textiles. She's a country coordinator for Cambodia. She's also one of the promoters of the climate action training. And over the past 10 years, she has had experience to engage with the industry in India, in Indonesia, and now in Cambodia. So Kristen, if you could please share with the participants in 15 minutes, the hundreds of hours of work that went into this climate action training, and also give an idea on how many participants have gone through it and what your plans are in order to address that challenge of knowledge that we saw.
Yes, thank you, Rakesh, for the introduction. I would be happy to do so. So I'm happy to walk you through some slides to give you an overview about the climate action training. So it should be up and running now. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. So I'm based in Phnom Penh. So for me, it's actually lunchtime. And I very much welcome you to this webinar. And I'm honored to have this small presentation about the climate action training. Like Rakesh said, I'm working for GIZ Fabric. That's the name of our project. And we work regionally on fostering sustainability in the textile and garment sector. Not only in Cambodia, but also in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Myanmar, China, and Vietnam. And I'm here to present you the climate action training for the fashion industry. Let me share with you some key facts about the climate action training. So a year ago, GIZ Fabric has joined forces with the UN Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action and 10 brands and manufacturers that you can see here on the slide. So we have decided to come up with a foundational basic capacity building program for manufacturers. And it's supposed to help the suppliers to reduce their emission, or to get started to reduce their emissions by 30% by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050. These numbers come from the Fashion Industry Charter. And as you might heard, the UN Fashion Industry Charter has even increased its ambition level at the COP26. And we have jointly developed the training with the Fashion Industry Charter and Southpole, who have been our technical supporter for this. And we are very happy to have these brands and manufacturers on board, because they have provided us valuable input to all the modules, to the content. They have even provided their own material that we were allowed to use in that training. And in that way, we have ensured that this climate action training is tailored for the fashion industry and is really speaking and addressing the needs and knowledge requirements of the supplier, tier 1 and tier 2. The climate action training is a web-based training, which turned out to be a very good choice due to the COVID circumstances. And our target group are tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, the mid-management and technical staff at the factories. And the training is available for free of charge on the learning platform at Tingy. The content of the training covers knowledge on climate change, the impact of the fashion industry, GHG accounting and solutions. And what is really very unique about this climate action training is that it's available in 5 languages. Besides English, we also have managed to translate it in Mandarin, Khmer, Bengali, and Vietnamese. The climate action training, the online climate action training, is available in 2 versions. So on the one hand, you have the self-paced course that you can do by yourself online on Atinji for free. And it's always there, it's always available. And you can click all through the modules and can access all materials. And besides the self-paced course, we have also trained local trainers in 4 countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Cambodia, and Vietnam, to accompany the suppliers in implementing this course. So the trainer will ensure that you have an even higher learning experience and higher learning impact. So the trainers, they provide live webinar sessions, and they also help you to complete assignments. So you have take-home assignments, and it's over a course period of 8 weeks. So it's just a more intense learning experiences. But the content is the same like in the self-paced course, but you will be closely accompanied and coached by a trainer while doing this course. And GIZ Fabric has managed to try this tutor-guided course with 86 factories in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Vietnam, and Cambodia. So the trainings are still running. They have started in September, and they are still running until January. And this is where we kind of, where the local trainers provide this climate action training in their local languages to the manufacturers. Let's walk you through the content of the climate action training. So the climate action training consists of 5 modules. The first module is really about climate change. Why is climate change important? How is the fashion industry impacting or has effects on climate change? And also does climate change impact the fashion industry, and how it could benefit you if you really tackle the mitigation challenge at your factory. The second module is all about the GHG emissions. So you will learn what is scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, where do they occur at your factory, and what does it mean for you? Where are your boundaries, and where are your scope boundaries at your factory? And the module 3 is the technical module where you really learn following the GHG protocol, how to account your GHG emissions at your factory. So you will go into detail, and you will be guided step by step on how you can account and report your GHG emissions. And module 4 is about the target setting. So you will be introduced, like, what is a smart target setting, what baseline would make sense for you, and where are my boundaries of this target. And you will also learn how an action plan looks like and how you can monitor your reductions over the period of time to achieve your target. And module 4 then provides you with solutions. So after you have known what GHG emissions are and what you can do to account them and to set a target, you will also get insights into solutions. So module 5 will identify opportunities in the field of energy efficiency and renewable energies. And this is also why we are here, and that's why I have a deeper look into that module. So the module 5 consists of 2 parts. The first part is on energy efficiency measures. So the course will provide you with a knowledge on how to establish an energy management system. It also includes many examples of energy saving opportunities that are applicable in the factory, and it also includes a self-assessment exercise. The second part of the module 5 looks deeper into renewable energy solutions. So it mainly covers 3 main technologies: solar PV, solar thermal, and biomass. And the following questions will be answered in that course. So you will really learn why is it important to implement renewable energy solutions, and what could be typical renewable energy solutions for the factories to reduce scope 2 emissions, and what is the difference between an on-site and an off-site solar PV, which we will also tackle in this webinar in more detail. You will learn about the OPEX and CAPEX model, and you will also provide it with a lot of examples of good practices, and you will also get a factory example that have established, for example, a rooftop solar. The other topics are on solar thermal. So you will learn how does the solar thermal actually works, what is it about, and how could biomass also help you in reducing GHG emissions. So these will be the topics, and besides the modules, which are established and designed very interactive, you will also get a lot of additional materials and resources on, for example, solar, PV. So we have come up with so-called knowledge products that we have developed together with South Pole. And it's about the Asia context. So we have a knowledge product on, for example, how to assess suitability for solar, or what are renewable energies as an introduction. How does solar manufacturing work, or how does a PV system work at all? So it's really basic and simple to use and understandable knowledge product that give you insights into that topic in the Asian market. And besides the general Asia market perspective, we have also come up with some very country-specific information on solar for Pakistan, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. So, for example, one knowledge product is about local financing in Bangladesh, or how does different investment models for rooftop solar projects in Vietnam look like, or what are the different regulations and frameworks for solar in these countries. So it is really a nice overview and really a nice insights into these different topics. We also, besides that, we also have additional resources on renewable energies for textile factories that are that can be found in that course. And this is how the climate action training looks like on the platform at Tingi. So these are the 5 languages, and this is how you can access it. And we also have some testimonials from some brands and manufacturers who have already implemented this course, either as a self-paced or they were part of the tutor-guided training course. And I will not read out all the testimonials, but just to give you some highlights. For example, it is said that it's really fundamental, essential concepts of climate change are being conveyed in the course, and the various local languages are really appreciated. And also, for example, Adidas has already committed that they will roll out this climate action training, and it will be part of their environmental program. And also, it was very, we got various feedback, positive feedback from some brands that the examples and exercises that come from the fashion industry were very appreciated because they really reflected reality. And the reason why is that is because we have involved the manufacturers and brands in developing the content material. So that's why we are very proud of these examples. And also the very technical term about the GHG calculation was appreciated. Let me give you some numbers about the outreach of the climate action training. So here you can see a heat map, and so far we have participants or users who have accessed the course online from 53 different countries. But you can clearly see that most of the participants come from the region Southeast Asia and Asia, and this is also where our target group is from, and where also our examples and the content are also taken from. And the most commonly used language was English, and then followed by Mandarin and Vietnamese. And these are the numbers of users. You have to know that the climate action training course was just launched 3 months ago. So we have started in July to work on the platform and everything. And then in August, we had the first webinar with a climate fashion charter where we presented that this climate action training is coming. And then in September, we have really launched the English Khmer Mandarin version. And we started some of the tutor-guided trainings in Cambodia and Pakistan. And then in October, we have done a bit of more promotion. We have done the press release, a flyer. And then by now, in November, we have about 1,000 users who have accessed the Atingi platform to do this climate action training course. I cannot tell you yet if they have really completed the course all through 5 modules, or if they have just exited and looked at it. This is really hard to distinguish, but nevertheless, we think it's not a bad number for a course that has been just launched 3 months ago to have at least 1,000 people who were interested to use and access this course. And here are all information you might need if you want to access the course. We have a flyer. We have also a promotional video where you can listen to some voices from the brands who have co-developed this training. And we also definitely have an email address where you can always ask us any questions, or if you want to know any more information. And as my last slide is, this is also our media response after we have launched the press release. So we even had an article in the Phnom Penh Post, in Kina Intel, and also in social media. People referred to that climate action training course and gave some feedback. And also Tiff and Rakesh, they also have launched on social media some opinion or assessment of this climate action training course. So this is the end of my presentation, and I really hope that this course might be of interest to you. And I really like to invite you to access it and go through some of the material and content, as it provides you a very nice overview of the whole topic of climate change and GHG emission reductions and solar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen, for taking us through that journey. Yeah. Before you end, I'm curious, when your team saw that graph with the number of users growing now, yeah, since August until now, so is the feeling like, okay, wow, we're done. We're done, training is out, people are using it, or is it like, okay, fold your sleeves up because now we have to multiply it by 3 and take it to more countries, more factories, so we have to put in more energy. What is the feeling like?
Now, first of all, we were very happy that this course has been perceived as positive, and that we see that the brands and manufacturers were really keen on learning more about it. But we are still in the phase where we also like to collect feedback, right? From the tutor-guided courses in the 4 countries, we really do a continuous monitoring and collect feedback. Okay, what could be improved? How could it be what could be other examples, or how can we improve the overall climate action training? And then the second thing is we really have to continue also the promotion to make the course more known and really reach out to more people in more countries. But as of now, we are not yet planning to translate it now in Turkish and Hindi. We have all the requests from brands and suppliers that they also want to have it in more languages. But as of now, we focus on our main target countries and with the main languages, and we try to really make the course sustainable and continuously used. Yeah. And what we also do as a third action is we also reach out to other stakeholders, for example, the AII Institute or SDHC or other multi-stakeholder initiatives that also work on climate and do have climate programs, and also the HIC-FEM, and see if there are synergies or if they would like to use some of our course, some content from our course, and if we could kind of enter into some collaborations to have a larger scale and to even bring it to a higher level. Yeah.
Well, congratulations and all the best to your team who's involved in this. Thank you, Kristen. So having heard about this key piece of knowledge product from GIZ Fabric to support factories go through the journey from understanding the impact, the possibilities, the financing options, and so on, we are still talking about the textile supply chain, yeah, textile factories. Many of the people working in these factories have knowledge, purchasing chemical products, purchasing fabric, purchasing water sources or special solvents and so on. And now the same team has to also procure solar panels, yeah, somehow, and they have to, after understanding the possible options, they have to evaluate and check what they are getting. And of course, some of them would want to know and understand what should they be careful about, what kind of due diligence should be applied for setup of rooftop solar, just like what type of due diligence is established when setting up a machine or purchasing chemicals. So for that, we have our colleague, Mr. Sebastian Petreczek. He's based in Shanghai. He has experience conducting due diligence with customers based in Europe, but also in Asia. And he also has special expertise with quality assurance for the entire PV supply chain. He leads our global team on PV power plants. And Sebastian, now it's useful to hear and understand a little bit, what should we take care about when procuring services and products to set up rooftop solar? So Sebastian, if you can take all that knowledge and experience you have and take us through a journey in about 12 to 15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, for all the journey, I think you would need to give me much more time. But anyway, I would like to give you at least a bit of insights for today's session. So I just realized I'm the wrong page here. Okay, so well, I think what is really important and what Christine has provided here at the very beginning, the core know-how to transmit this core know-how, to give a very good overview over the things. I think this is very, very critical. I've been involved in a lot of projects in emerging countries, starting like with South Africa 10 years ago, in the past years in China, in Southeast Asia. And the good thing about solar is it's very easy in comparison to other technologies for power generation. But at the same time, that's a problem, because the thing is that everybody actually really believes that their company can do it. And while I, at least to a certain degree, can say that's at least partially wrong, and of course we want to contribute that while our clients and of course the whole industry is getting good projects, and therefore I want to share my know-how with you. At the end, yeah, as I said already, solar is quite easy, but in detail, many things can go wrong. What can happen? And these are projects here on the left side in the pictures. Fortunately, not projects that we have been involved, but you see this from time to time. What could happen? Wrong designing. There are people involved that do not have sufficient know-how about how to design it, take wrong assumptions, do not take really extreme situations, because you can understand sometimes there's high wind loads, snow loss that are not so, that are not really considered when designing plants. At the end, sometimes also mistakes can be done in the calculation, taking wrong models, taking sometimes small things that really can happen, that the design is wrong. On the other hand, you could have the best design in the world. If your EPC party does a wrong execution, you will have a very similar issue. Sometimes we also see the different materials used. Mixing up different materials could be really a big issue, leading to corrosion, for example. It's only one example, but also at the end, lead to possibility of hotspots in the plant. What could be consequences? Well, consequences could be destruction of the PV system, so that means a loss of the investment. However, as we're talking today about commercial industrial rooftop projects for Southeast Asia, particularly the damage of the building. So that could mean also that building could not be used anymore. Threat of life, sometimes also loss of permits, which lead at the end as well to a loss of investment, at least for a certain period of time. Also, and I think this is for commercial industrial rooftop projects, very, very critical that we are here working with electricity. So wherever there's electricity, there's a potential for heat. That could mean certain connections could get hot if it's not being worked out properly. You see this here, this is called a combiner box. That's somewhere in the middle of nowhere. If that happens in the middle of nowhere, normally that's not a big problem. However, you can imagine if something's getting hot and starts a small fire on a roof, and especially on a roof where probably a lot of workers are working in the industries, that could lead really to huge damage as well as threat of life. And therefore, especially whenever it comes to electricity, one has to be very careful and put in a lot of due diligence in order to avoid that kind of situation. And that should be looked into from different angles. Well, but in general as well, so it's relatively easy. So good projects are possible. And one good example is our own plant, which we have designed and built with a partner company here in our location in Shanghai. We have here a 30 kilowatt plant that we have basically designed by ourselves and then executed with the partners I've just mentioned. And but it also allowed us in our history of solar, which we have been working on already for close to 40 years, to really get a lot of experience. And well, and with our own investment, it was an own investment. And you can imagine for huge locations. So we have here around 1,400 people working our labs. That's not sufficient to run the whole building, but it covers at least partially, and to make sure that we're also on the right way for GHG emissions. In combination also with a nice SCADA system. It's also possible to really measure at the end what has been achieved. So now I wanted to focus a bit more on the technical due diligence side. So why is it due diligence needed? Normally, when somebody is planning a project, there needs to be money. The investments are typically huge. So banks are getting involved. And in order to get bank finance, the banks want to understand the risks. So they would come normally and ask for technical due diligence in order to understand if the risks have been addressed and mitigated properly. On the other hand, as well, if investors are planning to invest, for example, into existing assets, they also want to understand, are there any risks related? How is the sustainable production of the plant ensured for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years? Because at the end, the lifetime of a plant is quite long. So therefore, things need to be really in a very proper situation in order to make sure that there's a proper rate on return. So what does that include? Typically, we're looking into different kind of risk, technical risk, and we as rather the engineers in such a project, we would rather look on the technical side. However, of course, they're not only technical risks, they're also risks in regards to the commercial situation as well as the legal risks. So that could be, for example, with power purchase agreements, with environmental permits, with construction permits, off-taker legal risks. So there are quite a couple of things involved. At the end, however, they're always somehow to a certain degree mixed. So we would normally call them techno-commercial risks. So we cannot only fully focus on the technical side, because at the end, there are always implications on the commercial and on the legal side. And projects does need to be understood from a very holistic point of view. So what does it mean? What is the definition of a technical due diligence? Technical due diligence gives an independent third-party assessment and evaluation of the technical aspects of an investment project. Analysts identify potential risks and costs as well as opportunities from a technical point of view. This helps the investor to make an informed decision on whether to invest in the project or not. So the technical due diligence would be a very basic tool and document, which at the end gives the party the independent view, if it makes sense, or if it doesn't make sense, or if there might be any alternatives which could be more appropriate. How would a typical due diligence look like? So you can imagine, depending on if a project is just being developed, if it's already under preparation, if it's from an investor point of view or from a lender point of view, there could be always a slight different focus. Nevertheless, at the end, as I've mentioned, the view is typically very holistic. So you would look into the site or the roof, understand the general location, understand the shading situation. Particularly on a roof, it's very critical that the roof is very stable, that it has been independently assessed from a structural engineer. Also that it's waterproof, and that it fulfills quite a couple of conditions. And in some cases, it might also make sense to strengthen the roof in order to make sure that the plant does not need to be taken off in the next 10, 15 years. At the end, we do not want to touch the plant as long as it's properly operating. Then, of course, as well, from a rather technical point of view, looking at the components, how are the PV modules, how are the inverters, how are they technically, but on the other side, how are also the contracts with them? How are the warranty conditions? So that should be also very well understood, because a lot of investment at the end is for the equipment. Yeah? So for PV modules, that would be probably around 30, 35%. When we're looking 10 years back, the share was rather 60, 70%. Nowadays, there are other parts that have similar weight. The civil engineering, monitor security system, and so on. So quite a couple of topics, as I've mentioned. Yield assessment, of course, one has to understood what is the expected yield over the period that we're looking into. Of course, there needs to be confidence about the participants. How is the track record, for example, of the EPC company? Who are the other parties that play an important role? How do they fulfill their tasks? How are they incentivized? How are the contracts being set up? EPC contract, O&M contract, very, very critical in order to have the right incentives, the right punishments as well if something does not really work well, and how to mitigate those. And of course, technical permits, I've mentioned this already, the financial modeling where the technical due diligence provides at least certain basic input parameters in order to assess if a project is feasible or unfeasible. There are various project phases which are very important to note. Normally, you would start with a kind of feasibility study to understand what are the boundary conditions before you go into more and more details with the conceptual design. But at the end, especially when it's a big plant, let's say we're talking about 1 to 3 megawatt. So we have really then bigger rooftops available to also specify the plant and then also ask different parties to provide proposals in order to have the most competitive technical as well as commercial proposal. And only then, after also getting the financing together, going into further phases with a proper construction, a proper support also by independent parties to verify that everything is in line with the investment project, also in regards, of course, to quality milestones. So at the end, it's true that we want to make sure that we do not only make sure that the project is safe from a very technical point of view, but at the end, we are also talking here about really the financial conditions. So how does the typical stream of money look like? Here we have the EPC company, so the company that's building the plant. Normally, so they want to get paid, of course, according to the work that they're doing, and in regards to the milestone payments that have been agreed in their contracts. They would get money from the investor of the SPV. The SPV is the company that's being founded very specifically to build up the plant and probably also to maintain it. So they want to get the money from the investor. At the end, the investor provides certain share of equity, but of course, they're typically also dependent on the lender. So the lender provides then the rest, the loan of the money, which at the end flows to the investor and then to the EPC on the other hand. So the interesting part is now that investor and EPC, they are of course not really objective in their decisions. So sometimes they would like to have the money rather earlier than later. This could be quite well understood, which could create, of course, problems for the execution of the project. At the end, what happens is that especially the banks that are involved are taking the risk. And we always have to consider at the end that if there are projects in the market that do not run well, lenders are quite risk aware. They may like increase the premium or the increased interest rate, which could harm the market overall. So it's very important that the market itself regulating to mitigate risk in order that lenders keep the financing conditions in proper situation, in proper conditions. So at the end, what is then also critical for the sake of good projects and for the development of the market, that there's an independent party monitoring the activities, starting from a due diligence over the constructions and acceptance on operations, because there's the independent view that can, so to say, guarantee a high quality of the project with a very independent view, so not to the view to any of those parties. And well, of course, we would be very happy to support in those projects. As I said, we have been active in the solar industry for close to 40 years. Especially in the past 10 years, we have worked a lot on big power plant projects, greenfield projects, as well as rooftop projects. And if you have any questions, please feel free to approach me to discuss them very specifically what we could do for you. Thanks.
Right. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Right. You nicely and eloquently described how when purchasing, we have to take care, of course, of the module itself, which is being purchased, then the overall setup, and then the financing part. So let's start looking at the module first. What should we be looking at for a module, and what can good look like? So for that, we have my dear friend and an expert with solar PV panels, Mr. Vitor Rodriguez. He's the technical leader for Longi Solar. It's a relatively young company, only about 21 years or so, which has been recognized for its efforts and development. Vitor has experience working in South America, in Europe, and collaborating with the entire supply chain of PV. So Vitor, for the audience here who are looking at what should they be looking at into a solar panel and how it could help, could you compress those 21 years and what you have experienced as Longi Solar into 12 or 14 minutes?
I will do my best, Rakesh. First of all, thank you for the invitation, also for the opportunity to be here. It's a pleasure. So just please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So I was requested to present the modules part. I would like to start just a small short presentation about the company that I represent. So I'm like Rakesh mentioned, I represent Longi. Longi is actually the largest PV module manufacturer in the world regarding capacity. But like you said, we are quite a young company. So maybe the most interesting topic is that we did not start with modules. We started with wafer manufacturing. So the wafers that then we also provide to other manufacturers for them to also produce their cells. It means that we have both business units. The wafers, we still do it. We introduced the monocrystalline technology. This had a high impact in the sector that I will mention later on. And then in 2015, we started with module manufacturing. And maybe just one hint about one thing that we did this year that is related to the presentation and the topic today. We acquired a hydrogen company. So why? This is a business unit, but the idea of acquiring this company is because now we have to change our mindset. So today we are speaking about the fashion industry. We are speaking about the energy transition, how to change from conventional energies to renewable energies. And we are a renewable energy player and stakeholder, but we need to look to ourselves as well. What I'm trying to say is that we also have our commitments. So most of the manufacturers of modules are also joining programs and targets. I give you some example. In 2018, when we defined the solar for solar, so using solar to produce solar and reduce also our own emissions. This was also under the United Nations Climate Change Conference that we signed this. Then we also joined the RE100, EV100, EP100 with very well-defined targets. And this is the message that I want to transmit, is that we are also looking to our production and not only just advising to use PV to reduce in other manufacturing sectors or industries. So is it important to look how the things are changing? We are speaking now a lot about Asia. You mentioned that at least this group has experienced a very global experience from South America to Asia to Africa. And if you see, there are more and more countries joining these kind of targets. Okay, so it's important that we, as the main stakeholders in this transition, we also understand which targets and how to support these. And when we speak about carbon neutralization, what are we speaking about? How can we achieve that? So I spoke, for example, that we are making commitments in programs to reduce emissions. And this is one of the parts, but also the CO2 sequestration is one of the parts that will help with the balance. So this is a very simple scheme, and probably we are today focused on the energy transformation when we start to use clean energies instead of more pollutant energies. But just to leave the idea also that the process also includes CO2 sequestration that we can use with the green plants, or even with the treatment of exhaustions and so on. So it's not only from the emission part, but also from what we emit, how we can reduce that. And to be honest, and I think this is important for the message today, is it PV really neutral? Is it zero emissions? So when you produce a module, is it zero? No. And we have to be honest and direct. And that's why we are also joining these programs. So to give you an idea, the manufacturing of the PV module is still where you have the main impact on the CO2 emissions. And that's why we, as the lead manufacturers of PV, also want to make sure that we will contribute to this reduction. And when you look for the balance, it's important to understand if from what are your emissions and what you can contribute for the savings, you have a positive balance or not. So we have a lot of countries that already require certificates or special schemes that approve this balance. To give you an idea, for France, we have to calculate exactly which emissions we have, what we can save with the solar generation, and to have a certificate to be able to operate and sell our products in France. But from other visions, and I think this is, I will not go in details, but we have even tools and ways to calculate what is this balance. And we consider that it's very important that we can look to a map like this and understand what is really the contribution. And we are still speaking today where we are starting to put measures that will help to reduce also our emissions. Basic line, today we have already a positive balance when we compare our emissions to the savings that the solar can produce, but also this will get even better because we are taking actions at the moment. And how will the PV help on this? We spoke about the balance, we have a positive balance. Now we are speaking about the fashion industry, other sectors. And we see also that solar is the most fast growing sector on the energy production. There is a reason why. First, solar help us to make the transition by replacing traditional energy sources. We speak about products with high efficiency and low emissions. And of course, if we add to this the reduction of emissions on the manufacturing process, it will be for sure one of the best solutions to help us, but also to be sure that we are using something that will not harm as other energies. And it's not only commitments, we need to be a little bit more stronger than that. And for example, in 2023, we will have the first wafer manufacturing place totally neutral. This is a very step forward, and there are commitments until 2030, but even I was a little bit surprised that in 2023, we can already speak about a wafer, a manufacturing place zero. And I say this because in the wafer process is where you spend more energy, okay? But it's not only the manufacturing process. We need to look to the entire chain. So the actions go beyond the module manufacturing, the wafer manufacturing. We need to make sure that also our suppliers, they also fulfill and they are also looking to this. So we have specific BOMs, we have specific providers. We are working with providers in a way that we have also the supply chain more controlled and the part of the emissions. For example, and being direct, the polysilicon treatment is where you spend a lot of energy, and still a lot of this energy comes from coal. Let's work on that. Okay? Let's be honest, direct, and work on that. Let's move to the modules. Let's move to the final question that Jurak asked me about which modules, how to look to the modules. Today, the modules are not only a question of price, a question of efficiency, but they are most also related to reliability. We heard Sebastian speaking about some issues, some risks that we need to consider. The modules is still the part of the largest part of the investment on the PV plant. So you need to be sure that you get a module that is produced under the conditions that I showed, but that also will be reliable, efficient, and give you the result. So today, the design of a module is much more than just get a certain output power and try to be competitive on the price. But I mentioned that the solar is still the cheapest way to produce electricity. And I would like to finish my presentation with a very positive and strong message. We worked a lot in the last years, and this is a very dynamic sector where from the optimization of the wafers, from changing of technologies, from penetrations of new efficiencies and so on, we were able to reduce the cost of the systems in 10 years more than 80%. And this is one of the good points about solar. Because if we were not competitive, probably we were not growing as we are, and me, Sebastian, and so on, we will not be around for more than 10 years in the sector. So this means that besides it is a very good opportunity to use solar for the energy transition, also your investment is now much more reliable than 15 years ago. The efficiencies are changing a lot. If you see in this graphic, for example, in 6 years or 5 years, the way you change from efficiency from one unit, from one module, from one cell, it's really impressive. And this is not stopping. I am now working for a manufacturer, and we are releasing new solutions every year. But these solutions have to be reliable and also have to be flexible. So when we speak about rooftops, and you asked me, how can we look to the module? I should take the words of Sebastian, be careful regarding the risks of the technology, choose your product, your supplier in a very cautious way, but also look to the solutions that you have on the market. You have a lot of flexibility from the manufacturers right now with different dimensions, designs, power outputs, and so on. And the message is that for any kind of installation, rooftop, climatic conditions, and so on, you will find a solution on the PV modules. And to finish and leave the last message, also, they need to be reliable. And this is also where we use entities like Cure Island with their experience to make sure that when we produce our products, they will be used and they will perform in the way that you are expecting. Thank you so much. Any questions, please let me know.
All right. Thank you, Vitor. Thanks for showing us what we should be thinking of and looking at, what terms we should consider when procuring solar. So having looked at what we have to be careful about, what should we be looking at, having looked at what are the parameters and attributes of a PV module we should consider, about the company who produces PV module we should consider. I guess there would also be a possibility, Vitor, for you to engage with the textile industry, because at least 2 of the challenges that the PV industry is also facing is the PFAS chemicals on the anti-soil coating. Mm-hmm. That's also something that textile industry is working on, eliminating PFAS, and also about the social labor topics, which again, yes, the textile industry has a lot of experience. Yeah. So having looked at all of that, let's hear about how it's done. We have for that Mr. Hugh Tran. He's the CEO of Untitled Solar based in Vietnam. He has over 13 years of experience supporting the industry, setting up rooftop solar. Hugh, there's an interesting part from one of your interviews where you said life is a ride, nothing is guaranteed. And you also went on to say that if you don't take any risks, then you don't come up with something special. So if you could please share with us how you supported the industry in Vietnam, especially the supply chain of fashion companies, take those calculated risks, take them through that journey and arrive at something special. Yeah. Hugh is also joined by his colleague who's head of finance, Mr. Ralph Schmidt. Today we'll hear from Hugh, of course, and then Ralph will support us during Q&A. So Hugh, if you can take the next 10, 12, 15 minutes to take us through, that would be great.
Thank you, Rakesh. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hugh. I'm CEO of Untitled Solar. And at Untitled, we hold a vision of bringing 100% renewable to the world, as well as bringing better welfare for the workers who work for the supply chain in the fashion industry. So our target is to focus on bringing renewable to all of the supply chain, direct to the factory, as well as to assist for the brand to go for their COP26 target. Right. So we bring renewable to the world by both wind and solar and storage and green hydrogen. So please, okay. So, and right now we have a pipeline of development in totally 84 countries. We are very active in Asia. We already started to dip our toe into US projects and have a pipeline in Europe. especially East Europe. And okay, so this is what we do. Aside from solar rooftop, we also do the battery storage. We do the DPPA. DPPA stands for Direct Power Purchase Agreement, where we build utility, solar farm, wind farm, battery farm to power for the factories under the utilizing the current network of the utility grid, such as PLN in Indonesia and EVN in Vietnam, EDC in Cambodia, and so on. EV, we bring EV to the workers who work for the factory with the reasons of right now, for the shoes and fashion industry, each factory employed like 20, 30,000 workers in one roof. Imagine 20 to 30,000 workers in one roof. Imagine such a huge amount of the gasoline combustion engine could convert into EV, right? There's so much more carbon emissions we can reduce by that activities. And these are the development pilot. So right now we have a partnership with brands such as Nike, VF, Puma, Decathlon, Adidas, and New Balance. And we work with them in both solar rooftop, battery storage, EV, and direct power purchase agreement. On top of it, right now our development pilot is very active in Asia, Europe, and US. So next page, please. For example, this is one of the largest projects we built by far. If you look at the scale, under this roof, there's 25,000 workers working under these roofs. And we built this, it's just a starting point, right? We are going to copy and paste this success story into multiple countries, including Indonesia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and so on. Please move the next page, please. Okay, and about the case study of this success story of one of the factory who works for 3 brands. They work for, in the left hand side is they work for Nike and Adidas. In the middle side they work for VF, and you see on top of the renewable energy, what we do for them is also affordable housing for their totally 40,000 workers, where we build a house per Saint-Gobain, the French standard, right? And the workers who work for those factories just pay $1 US. Remember, pay $1 US. They own a house and then they reserve the right to pay back for the house in 20 years or minimum 15 years. So what do the brand have? They have a reliable workforce. What do factory have? They have a loyalty workers who work for the factories with the belief, if I just do a good job for these factories, I'm gonna own the house on my name for the next 15 years. So they have a belief of working hard, being loyal, and they come home, living in a good house, they take a good rest. Next day they come to work, they make better products happily. So, and they have a trust that their children gonna have a better welfare, better life, right? So the whole world becomes a better place to live. Next page, please. Okay, and of course, having success story doesn't mean that it is an easy to do thing. To do that project, we went through so many challenges, right? First one is, supply chain. Now, people get the feeling of like solar power keep going down, but it's not the case anymore. Now the solar price going way up. And, we face the worker mobilization during COVID time, right? So, a lot of factories shut down. People don't come to hometown. They will give up the jobs, and also regulation changes. Okay, under those development country, right? We talk about country enter strategy. To go into developing economies, we look at the transparency index of the countries, and most of the developing country having pretty modest transparency index. And what does it imply to us as investor? We have to deal with so much complexity in terms of regulations. Changes happen in like 48 hours. In advanced economies, you have a change in law, you seek public opinion, you give a buffer time for them to adapt, right? Before you trigger the law. But in a developing economies, you expect the rule change in 48 hours. You don't have a buffer time. So we actually went through all this hassle before we completed successfully the projects. We would say out of 100 projects we develop, we get 100% successful rate. It means we, at whatsoever cost, we spent all of our, by hook or by crook, we completed anyhow. And that is why these brands, this factory, they will trust on us. As long as they have a belief, if they sign with Interfor, eventually, regardless how challenges they are, Interfor gonna complete the project successfully for them. That's why now we are in a very good position to bring more renewable to the world. And these are our partners. Okay, look, we use world-class equipment. For example, the cable solar, we use a lab from Germany. I mean, inverter, we are using 100% from Fimer from Italy. This is actually from ABB technology. And the mounting, we use leather from Germany. This is from a Kirchdorf, a city in southeast Germany. And Mojun, I'm sorry, Victor, we didn't know you before, but hopefully we can soon use a Longji panel. And see, now we are Canadian JA and First Solar. And for the banking, we use international bank, a local bank where we operate. So with a team in the US and Germany, we're working with Bank of America, KfW, and Euler Hermes. And for the relationship with international partners, we're working with GIZ, like Miss Christine Summer, and with the USAID from America agency, right? And I do apologize, Sebastian. We didn't know you before. So for the owner engineering service, we are now partner with Rina, but hopefully very soon we can work with you to bring world-class technology to all our factories.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hugh. Ralph, would you like to take a few minutes to share what you are observing in terms of project finance? Would you like to add something there?
Yes, I can add something verbally, so we haven't prepared slides.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, I think if we are talking about a lot of markets which are developing. So if you have a developing market, you actually start more with local finance because the projects are small. International banks don't know the market so well. But that's how you also get smaller projects quite quickly done. If then the markets mature, like for example, what we see in Vietnam now, then obviously international banks become also more interested in the market and try to offer for the developers funding more on a project finance style, but often also project, like what you mentioned, project finance, but often project finance is not so known in the countries yet. And there are certain risks in the system, which we heard now from all the speakers, that it regulatory risk, that it transfer risk for money and various risks, exchange rate risk. So that means also that international banks, as adventurous they might be, they need still a certain structure to get more comfort. Yeah, and there, for example, the export credit agencies play a role to add their cover to the deals, which of course is means additional costs. Yeah, but overall, international financing can often be cheaper than local financing. But you have also to see, you need to reach a certain scale. Yeah, so no international bank will look at a 10 megawatt project. Yeah, or if you talk about rooftops, some rooftops are even smaller than that. Yeah, and I was actually a banker before 25 years. So, and we were looking at developers putting solar rooftop portfolios in some Southeast Asian countries together. And it simply took too long to just put 10 megawatt or 20 together. So, and that is, of course, then difficult. So if we have, of course, larger projects, then it becomes interesting for international banks to do that. And of course, today we address the fashion manufacturers, of course, they have the possibility to invest themselves. Some want to do that. Yeah, they want to own the solar rooftop in the end. They engage the EPC to build it, but want to own it in the end. They want to invest themselves. But some others don't want to invest, and then they rather use possibilities like we do in Indefol, where we own the rooftop solar, so there's no capital outlay for the factories, and they then pay the power price to us. So this is another model, yeah. Or if you need a larger scale, what we also heard from several speakers today, then of course you might take a PPA or DPPA and take and procure your power from somewhere else, or additional power from maybe some utility farms.
Got it. Thank you, Raul, for that short but concise overview. Now, taking that forward with regards to financing and with regards to an international development bank like the Asian Development Bank, this is what was step one. There was a study conducted, for example, in India and in many other countries, where the manufacturing textile sector was one of the recommended sectors for rooftop solar. And a SWOT analysis was done to move it forward. So now it's interesting to hear from Asian Development Bank and Mr. Jigar Bhatt. Mr. Jigar Bhatt had been working in the Government of India Energy Department for many years, followed by working in the private sector. And now as Senior Project Officer for Energy, he also engages with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Unfortunately, he's not able to join us live, but he sent a very short message telling us what's happening via the ADB in the region. So Ryan, can we hear the message?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening all. I am Jigar Bhatt, Senior Project Officer from India Residence Mission of Asian Development Bank. I am based in Delhi, in India, and my role is to act as a focal for the ADB's renewable energy investment in India. I would like to thank and congratulate the TUV team for organizing this webinar and giving me this opportunity. Let me extend warm welcome to all participants of this webinar. My apologies that I couldn't connect with you through live streaming due to other business exigency. The pandemic is taking away so much from us, but the good part is we could still convert such challenges into opportunity. For example, I could at least convey the message to you through this virtual platform. That means largely we are successful in performing our duties without any much interruptions. For today's webinar of solarizing the supply chain of fashion or textile industry, let me give my insights on the financial aspects of solar rooftop projects and ADB as a multilateral development bank's approach in the context of India operation, which is identical and therefore applicable for the Vietnam operation as well. So my message will be divided into 4 parts. ADB's operation in India, specifically solar rooftop sector in India, the challenges in solar rooftop sector in India, which is I think by and large common in the Asia and other part of the world, and financing solution by ADB. So these are 4 elements which I wanted to cover in this message. On ADB India operation, as of March 2021, ADB has committed around $14.62 billion in 208 projects across India in energy sector through sovereign operation. In calendar year 2021, if I talk about operational portfolio of India, out of that, energy sector projects are of about $3.3 billion, which is about 23% of India portfolio, out of which $100 million is under implementation specifically for solar rooftop projects. In my subsequent message, I would cover the detail of this program. Supporting renewable energy is, of course, a very key focus area of ADB. And that's why, and mostly the renewable energy intervention is coming through private sector, rather the government sector or public sector. I would say ADB is committed, and that's why the private sector, our private sector operating division, which is a non-sovereign operation, has so far financed around $900 million investment through debt or equity up to 2021, March 2021, and this is through 20 private sector projects which are financed across India. Our operation is fully aligned with ADB Strategy 2030, which talks about operational priority on tackling climate change and making cities more livable through promoting green, low carbon and sustainable energy solution. So this is overall about ADB India operation. On the specifically on the solar rooftop sector in India, many of you might be knowing that Government of India had announced a target of 175 gigawatt to be achieved by 2022. And this target is subsequently enhanced under the recent COP26 to 500 gigawatt by 2030. I mean, certainly these are very ambitious target. The first target up to 2022, which was 175 gigawatt, 100 gigawatt are targeted to be achieved through solar, entirely solar sector projects. This includes 40 gigawatt from solar rooftop projects. That means, and this is to be achieved by 2022. If we see overall at current, if we take a snapshot of India energy sector, as of now, India has done good despite of challenge which are posed by COVID pandemic, and India is on track, have achieved around 100 gigawatt plus renewable energy so far, but significantly lagging in rooftop solar target, which is of 40 gigawatt. And out of that 40 gigawatt, India has only achieved around 6-7 gigawatt so far. That means there is a significant gap in this target. Now, what has actually contributed in this gap? Why the solar rooftop sector is not has not picked up, and why it is not picking up? What are the challenges which are being faced in India in order to scale up the rooftop sector, solar rooftop sector? So let me come to those points. By and large, if we see in India, there are two business models which are under operation from the day when this solar rooftop sector has started business in India. Mostly, I mean, conventionally, the solar rooftop investment happens through capex mode. Subsequently, we have seen the trend is changing to the opex mode also. So what does mean by capex mode is the consumer or a rooftop owner invest to finance the solar rooftop projects by its own and install solar rooftop solar rooftop on its own roof. So the finance part is entirely borne by the rooftop owner themselves. While on the OPEX model, the financing of the rooftop project or rooftop investment is done by the renewable energy service company, a private company, and the roof is owned by the beneficiary. The PPA, power purchase agreement, is getting signed between the RESCO company and the rooftop owner or the beneficiary. Obviously, the power purchase agreement which are being signed are at a lesser tariff than the tariff which is being charged by the distribution company to the consumer. So that's why there is a win-win situation for the RESCO as well as for the rooftop owner or for the consumer. So in the value chain of the rooftop solar sector, these are the element of the value chain according to my analogy. The ministry in India, there are Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Power. I think these are the two key ministries who play a very critical role in India. The second element of this value chain is a financial institute, because definitely any such developmental projects need financing, right? So the financial institute has to play some role, and that's the second element of this value chain. Third element of this value chain is distribution companies, because all these rooftop systems which are getting installed on the beneficiary's roof need support from the DISCOM, because by and large these all systems are grid connected. And in order to get the grid connections, you need either net metering or gross metering. The fourth element of this value chain is EPC company, those or a contractor, those who are installing solar rooftop systems, and RESCOs, renewable energy service companies. So these are actually playing another important role in this value chain. And the fifth and the last element of this value chain are consumers, the beneficiaries, the rooftop owners, from those who own the roofs. Yeah. So I think this value chain must play in a synchronized manner. Yeah. In order to achieve the success in the sector, institute can play a vital role in sustainable development of rooftop solar, or for that matter any other sector per se. So once again, on behalf of Asian Development Bank, I would like to convey my gratitude to TUV team for giving me this opportunity. For any queries, please send it through TUV team or directly reach out to me through my email at jbhatt@adb.org. Please take care of yourself, your family. Please stay safe. Thank you so much.
All right. Having looked at what ADB is doing, so what we observe is, in general, the requirements are there, and then there are frameworks where companies commit. So a lot of fashion brands have committed based on the science-based targets. They have a set of targets for both themselves, but also their supply chain. At the same time, there are requirements on country level, whether these be SDGs or on the level of the market where the company stock is listed. And like in every other case, these big fashion brands and their business partners, that is yourself, would start off with a strategy on how to achieve this. We'll have a status quo and a plan, which is reported via the CDP platform or elsewhere. And then it's important to measure. So we talk about how much energy is used, what will be the GHG emission in the current situation, what will happen if you change to renewable, what happens when you have better chemicals that take less energy and less water, and hence the savings, and so on. So to start off with this digitization, where you start capturing information and measuring information, yeah, in near real time, after which, of course, you will implement the decarbonization measures. One of them could be renewable energy, rooftop solar. Others could be better chemicals, better water, or energy efficiency topic. But finally, you would also want to legitimize what has been done at a factory level, that somebody validates the scenario before and the scenario after implementation, so that you be able to share this with your stakeholders, with your shareholders, and with the world, yeah, the work you're doing, which is typically by third-party companies. And now, having looked at the big picture, having looked at the knowledge programs which are available from GIZ, what the due diligence activities that you should be looking at, how to look at a solar module, what should you be asking from your supplier, and then also a case study on how to set things up, for example, yeah, that we heard from Indefol, or how development banks and many others are there with lots of money to support this transition. Let's hear from you. What do you feel should happen next? Do you feel that even though you heard about the financing options, that perhaps your neighborhood bank to whom you went for a loan was not very familiar, that maybe some more technical assistance should be set up for these banks and these green financing operations of theirs? Do you feel that new products are necessary for SMEs in terms of green investments, that these financiers and banks come to you and offer to you a bespoke package which makes sense for textile SMEs? Do you feel there should be more exchange of knowledge and best practices amongst different stakeholders of what has worked, what has not worked, and what should be improved? Do you feel that there should be even more training programs on the topic of green financing, both for the SME textile factory, but also for the financiers? Do you feel that policy needs to be streamlined even further? Or do you feel that the way it's going on now is okay and no change is necessary? If you could please select and give us an idea on what do you feel, what have you experienced in your business dealings, it will give a nice reflection to us, yeah, and also to the other stakeholders who are there on what else should be done. So maybe Ryan, we should pull up the results on the screen, and if you can share the results. So we see that there's, of course, a need for even more training on green financing, both for the textile factories, but also for the financiers. And that there should be even more sharing of best practices. We see also that banks should get some more assistance, technical assistance on green financing. And nobody said that business as usual is okay. I would like to request our panelists briefly, having looked at the feedback from the audience, if you would want to comment based on what you see and what your organization will do over the next 6 months to 1 year, based on what you see from the audience. Yeah. So let's start off with ladies. So Kristen, we start with you. There's demand for even more training and knowledge sharing and best practices.
Yeah, I would agree. There's always demand for more training and capacity building, but it must be very tailored to the needs and questions of the manufacturers or the financier or whoever wants to do training. We focus on the manufacturers, so yeah, we should make sure that their questions will be addressed in the training. But we do also have renewable energy programs who particularly focus on that, and who also train local consultants in the developing countries to then provide the services to the manufacturers. So yeah, there are programs on renewable energies out there already.
Okay. And
did that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, yes, it does. And I'm curious if, let's say, a couple of years from now, if we had one more session to look at where we are, what do you hope to be sharing with us in about 2 years' time? What are you hoping that you will be telling the participants? What has happened? What more has happened?
2 years or 20 years?
2 years.
2 years. Yeah, I would hope that the regulatory frameworks in some of our countries, especially Cambodia, will have much improved, so that I would see more solar rooftops being on factory roofs. So yeah, because there are always some, not always, but there are countries where the framework conditions are not favorable to solar. So, and that needs to be changed first in order to have a real business case behind it. So in 2 years, I hope we have a higher share, especially in Cambodia, in renewable energies and the energy mix.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Then next on to you, Sebastian. Participants feel that there should be expanded technical assistance to banks for green financing with regards to solar. What do you hope to tell us in 2 years' time with regards to this demand?
Yeah, well, well, what I can say is I've mentioned already before that I've worked like personally also with banks in developing countries. I've mentioned South Africa, and I saw they actually also, once they started to make the decision to go into a market, there was very quick development. So they refined the procedures, they understood the technology, they understood the risk, and they understood how to mitigate those. And based on that, I think they could really offer very clear packages to the market. And I would hope also for the new emerging markets in Southeast Asia that the same would happen. Having 2 or 3 good projects really supported by really a competent party, that everybody getting confidence. Maybe in addition with certain programs, certification projects, for example, of installation companies or O&M companies, that everybody's getting confidence in order to really speed up the whole process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then it's over to you, Vitor. When you are exporting your products to so many countries, and I guess you are also reviewing what is the regulatory regime, perhaps you could share with us what your organization is doing together with other peers in this space.
Okay. Thank you, Rakesh, for the question. And in fact, we are speaking about financing and we are speaking about systems. But if we look to the product itself, it also needs to be bankable. So this is the first step, and all of the products that we release for any market have run these special programs with these special reports so that we give trust on the bankability of our modules. So you have all these PV Tech, PV Magazine, all these schemes about bankability ratings. So when a client approaches a bank and he says he uses one of these products, at least the product has a trust. This is one step, Rakesh. But we also look to these results that you show, and we have the same feeling. If we pass to the systems, there are some lack of knowledge. And even in more developed PV markets like Spain and so on, you still have this topic. Why? There was a lot of focus on utility scale, and now we are speaking on distributed generation. To give you some hints, in China, we do not only manufacture wafers and modules, we have also the systems part. We created a department that is called Systems and Solutions, where we also create and invest on PV projects. For the rest of the world, this is not happening yet, but we did create more technical support to our clients and to the institutes. The reason why I was hired by Longi and I was invited was exactly to develop this kind of technical support. So this means on the pre-sales part that you support the entities, the clients, the EPCs, the investors on technical questions. And we are trying to approach as more as possible them.
Got it. Thank you, Vitor. Hugh, you shared with us some excellent case studies of how things have worked, when you have been involved. There's demand from the audience about more knowledge sharing and best practices. Do you feel that in about a year or so on your website, people could see specific case studies and examples on what worked, and that they be able to learn from it and then get your help to replicate it?
I think, of course, right, because the key thing is that we want to bring 100% renewable energy to the world, so that our vision is to see the world completely run on renewable energy. So for that reason, whenever we knowledge we acquire, we are willing to share with the rest of the world so that more renewables can be built, and then everybody's going to be benefited from it. So this one answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, while we talk about renewable, while we talk about solar, I think we should take just a moment to also acknowledge that around 780 million people in the world have no access to energy today. Yeah? So from my side, I hope that there is a greater alignment of politics, of policy, of plans in terms of renewable energy for GHG emissions, so that on a factory level and an individual level, they be able to realize the potential of productivity improvements, GHG reductions, but also to have a better future for themselves and their children. I want to say once again, thank you to all the participants that took time today for this dialogue. Thank you for all of you, our experts, Ms. Kristen Sommer, Hugh, Vitor, Sebastian, and also Mr. Jigar Bhatt. And thank you, Ryan, for putting and pulling all of this together. Thank you for your time. Until next time then, please take care. Bye.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.